In this video, we will build the train time schedule that you see on your screen. It allows us to search for the trains that arrive at a given hour. We can also search for trains that arrive from a given destination and go through all the results. The sample is built with MindFusion Data Grid library for JavaScript. We have created a folder for our project, and currently we have it in an empty web page and a script subfolder, which includes all JavaScript files that we need for the data grid. The files are part of MindFusion Pack for JavaScript, which is available for download as an archive and includes the grid library. Let's add the references to the JavaScript files in the web page, right before the closing body tag. We also add a reference to another file called trains. This is the file that holds the data for our train schedule. If we open the file, we will see that it holds JSON data for the trains. Of course, in a real-world application, this data would most likely come from a database or a web server. In our sample, however, we will parse this JSON file and read the data for the grid from it. We will add now the div element that represents our grid. That's where the grid renders. It is important that the div has an ID, so we can reference it from code. We make it take most of the page. It is time now to think about the styling of the grid, and we will add a theme CSS file to our sample. We actually copied all themes for the grid. You can edit each theme as you like, or use it as a template for new themes. In our train schedule, we use the gray theme. Now we must create a new JavaScript file to hold the code for our application. We name it train schedule. There we add some namespace mappings to make our code easier to write and read. We need to reference this file from the web page as well. Let's start building our grid. We will start with the second column, which is easier to define. It is of type string because it holds the train identifier. We create an instance of the grid column class and set its data type property to string and choose a caption. Then we add the column to the columns array, which we need to define, of course. The name of the data field that we provide in the constructor is taken from the JSON array. The string type is one of the possible data types that you can use with the JavaScript grid. If we look in the online documentation, you can see that there is a rich choice of supported data types: numbers, date, currency, lookup, which represents a combo box, and many more. Our column shows a time value, which we will render with the help of the metadata property. Metadata allows us to customize the data type for the column when it doesn't fall into any of the conventional data types. The samples in that ship with the JavaScript grid library use metadata in several scenarios, so you can get better understanding how to apply the property when needed. The third column is nothing special. It is again of string type and represents the station from where the train departs. The fourth column is more interesting. It renders an image, which represents the type of the train. We have copied the images in a directory called images. It is in the root folder of the project, so we have to change the image URL in the JSON file. Now we create a column with image type. We use metadata again to provide an instance of the image picker control as a custom editor for this column. The metadata property exposes a variety of key values, to which you can assign different properties. Here we use custom editor. The image picker is one of the UI controls that are part of MindFusion JavaScript suite. We have included the UI library within the project and added a mapping to the UI namespace. We create a new instance of the grid class, and we need a reference to the div element. Its ID is grid, as written in the HTML code. The theme is called gray. We have included its CSS file. The model property of the grid specifies data values, the columns, and the key column for the grid. We don't want to allow new rows to be appended to the grid, and we want to disable cell selection. Finally, we must call render to see the grid. We also want to have the data sorted by the first column. Now we can try to see if our grid shows up. Here it is. We cannot use the image picker, however, because the cells are not editable. If we change that, we can navigate to a new image and replace the existing one. Let's make the cells not editable again. Now we have one more thing to add to this grid. Let's get back to the initial project. You see here that the text in the last column was colored in red or green if the train is expected later or sooner. Let's add this conditional formatting to our project as well. We add a helper method to compare whether the train is on time or will be arriving earlier or later. In it, we parse the date and create two new JavaScript dates to compare. We will handle the custom draw cell event, which allows us to apply custom drawing to cells rather than use the default rendering. The event data provides us with the row and column of the cells, as well as the content, both new and the default. We call then our method for comparing dates, and we decide whether to set red or green color to the div that represents the cell contents. We also add the default content of the grid cell. Now we can refresh the page and see if our custom drawing works. Here it is. Our schedule includes only a few punctual trains. The rest are either late or early. Good, it's just a sample. The next time we will deal with this tool strip at the top, which allows us to search for trains given the time or the town or city they come from. In this video, we wanted to demonstrate how to build the schedule grid, and we are now done with that. Thank you for watching, and thank you for your interest in MindFusion developer tools.